right, welcome everyone. We are back with another Innovation Insights episode. And with all of this talk about AI going on, I really was glad to see an AI governance framework come up. And with me today is two of the contributors or writers behind this great thinking. I know there's a bunch more of you guys out there that worked on this, but let you introduce yourself so I don't mangle all of your credentials. David, maybe you want to go first?
Sure, David Wood. I'm a professor at Brigham Young University. I've been teaching for about 17 years and just got into the Gen AI craze like everyone. We saw it first from our students, and so I started devoting research to understanding what's the effect on students, and then that just boiled over to practitioners, the profession, regulators, and it's just been continuing to run as fast as I possibly can and fall behind.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
I'm sure that's how we all feel about a lot
no,
of
it is.
this.
There's no keeping up with this. It's crazy.
Go ahead, Jason.
I'm Jason Pikoos. I guess I'm a consultant for most of my career. I started as an auditor, was with the advisory with the Big Four. For the last 13 years, I worked at a company called Connor Group, leading business transformation and technology. I've just recently left there, and I'm going to be joining a large public company in a technology and transformation role. And governance is super important. You can look at it from very different angles. This is a public company, so there's true what you might think of as I guess regulatory implications for getting this wrong, but to be totally honest, I think governance is actually just a good hygiene, generally speaking. So it was a real fun exercise writing the paper with David and our other co-authors.
Excellent, excellent. And I completely agree with you, which is why I was so glad to see your guys' research and the framework come out. Let's take one step back though, because David, when he introduced himself, had said it's really about generative AI. So can you really quickly just frame what are we actually looking at in this, or is the framework applicable to all? Can I cover machine learning and everything else as well? Or is it really just generative?
When we started, we were specifically aiming at generative AI. That was the new, hot, exciting thing out there. The principles of internal control go across everything. I mean, from traditional computing to manual processes to technology. But we did specifically identify risks that generative AI introduce, and then discuss controls and things we can do because of all of this new Gen AI material that's coming out.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
think the way we think about it and when we were writing the thing was take this and add it to. It's not you got a Gen AI system, this is the only thing you do. It's okay, you should do all those other things, such as access management and change management and all that stuff. But it introduces a series of additional risks, and these are really interesting ones that so combine the framework with what you're already doing.
I love that you said that because I've been seeing all this stuff about, oh, you need a separate policy, you need a separate policy. And I'm like, you need a policy that actually integrates your traditional IT policies and all of these additional things that are coming through with Gen AI. Let's kind of start. Well, Jason, has started with governance, so let's kind of talk about that. Oftentimes, too, I think people they hear governance, they tie that to corporate governance, and they go, "That's for really big companies." And you mentioned you're really big companies, but is this framework that you guys came up with, or what? Maybe let's change that. Why would is governance actually applicable even to smaller entities or nonprofits or government, say?
100%. I mean, governance, it actually is even good for us as individuals. If you're going to use ChatGPT on a personal account on the internet, you should have your own governance. What are the things that I'm willing to share with ChatGPT? What are the type of outcomes? What type of data am I going to load? So governance is applicable at all. You are right. Listen, large organizations have tiers of complexity. They have external regulatory. They have their brand in the marketplace, which will create an additional set of governance needs, or maybe more focus in certain areas. But it absolutely is applicable to everybody, even small organizations. You should define, even if you're 2 or 3 people in an organization, what is an acceptable use? You invariably have customers. Is any AI tool that you're doing protecting the information of the customers? Or maybe you steer clear of it altogether, right? So there's a lot of good. How do you choose the right type of AI? What are your goals with AI? These are all questions that are applicable whether you're a 3-person shop or a 60, 70,000 or 120,000 person organization. So I think the intent of the framework, and it even speaks about it in there, was for one to, hey, here's a whole bunch of questions. Here are a whole bunch of risks and controls. Apply them as you see relevant for your size and scale.
And I'll add to that. I had a very interesting conversation with a school board member, and they're like, "We have to have a Gen AI policy for our school board because the district is using this." And we said, "Well, here's this framework. Look at this." And they said, "That's so helpful. It's understandable. It's digestible." And I can say, "Okay, these parts didn't really fit, but these ones, yeah, I really need to focus on those." So absolutely, it is for the whole spectrum of different organization sizes.
I'm gonna echo that because when I first saw it, I remember David asked me for a quote, and I went, "Wait, I need time to digest it. Anytime I see governance, I know it's gonna take me a while to read it." And then he was like, "Oh, but I need it sooner. That's okay." And I went back and I went, "Okay, wait. I really want to give you something. So let me go back." And I was actually able to digest that very quickly and come back and say, I can see because you'll work with larger entities. I work with a lot of small and mid-size. And so I'm looking at it and going, I can totally see how I'm going to apply this to my clients. I can see how I'm going to apply this to the accounting firms that I work with. So yes, I agree with the way that you guys have done this, which is why I wanted you on the podcast. It was so masterful. We've been using the word framework, and so I think we should also make sure that we clarify that anytime there's a framework, it's not use everything. It's
Yeah.
not like a checklist, audit checklist where you're like, yes, I did it. No, I did it. It's really kind of pick and choose or figure out what makes sense. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that interpretation? And maybe could you give us some examples from the framework of where, hey, if this makes sense or that makes sense, this is when you would use it.
David, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. So I would say first off, you can download the framework for free at genai.global. And so you can look at it, and there's a free maturity model. And that's a great one where we go through 69 control considerations and you just ask a question. How are we doing? And from there, you might say, well, that's not relevant. I'll give you a very specific example. You might think about international data rules. Well, if you're not operating outside of the United States, or if you're only operating in one country, you don't really care what the European Union is saying, or those other things. So it definitely needs to be an accordion type style of how does it flex to your organization risks.
Yeah. When I think of the framework, what's what I liked about it is one, it took, I think they're like 69 control
Mhm.
considerations there, but it's really broken down into, I think it's four or five key buckets. So you can even start from that. Think about the broad areas that are applicable to you, right? Is the people, the environment, the bias risks more relevant? Or sometimes, to be honest, in some cases, if you're a very heavy accounting, that area may not be relevant, or you might be a smaller organization. So it's architected as, hey, what of these big five areas, which are most applicable to you? Then go one layer different. Look at the end breakdown of the 69 kind of, I guess there's about 13 specific control
Mhm.
risks and then 69 of the other control considerations, and narrow it down to what works for you, right? I guess it is a checklist in the standpoint of things to think about. It is not in the checklist of you should have marked every one of them off.
I like that. I like that. And knowing David does a lot of research and audit, I think that's been one of the criticisms on the audit side as well. There's all these checklists and all the auditors are
Mhm.
just following the checklist. And this is not one of those times to make sure you're definitely not doing that.
Yeah. Like the use of Gen AI, don't leave your brain at the door. You need to read the document and apply, professional, I guess, experience and skepticism to the document to make it fit to what you're looking to do.
Yeah, and that's why we call them control considerations and not like internal controls.
Yep.
These are conversation starters. And so you start having this conversation of, okay, this principle, this consideration, we need to think about it, or it's not relevant and move on to the next one.
Yep.
You mentioned that so usually when we think of from governance, we normally go into risk. So can you perhaps give us some examples of some risks that are, whether it's unique or whether there's a different way you need to look at the risk, um, when you're working with Gen AI? And we don't have to go through all of them, just some
Mhm.
good teasers, I think, so people can understand, hey, this is something I might want to read more.
Yeah. David, you want to go? I'm happy to go.
I'll go ahead, Jason. You can start
Yeah.
this time.
There are, and I think that's ultimately why we wrote the framework to begin with. There are unique risks that come with Gen AI. Probably the one that everybody is familiar with at this stage is the concept of hallucinations. The reality is the nature of these systems are is they don't. We used to program technology. I put the same inputs in. I would always get the same outputs out. It doesn't have most technologies today never had the capacity to make up information. The only time you got an erroneous response is either I actually provided bad information or there's a bug in the system. Really was those. And now you have a system which is effectively applying what we all would think of as human type of behaviors, right? Where it looks at the data and it could give you two different responses with the exact data information. It could give you erroneous responses. It could give you incomplete responses. So there is this, that is probably one of the most common one, and it is one of the most scary ones in many respects for accountants. And I think people often use that as an excuse to steer clear of it. Oh, it might be wrong, and therefore I should not touch it. And I do think that's a really, it's not a great methodology of thinking about it. So I think when you think about that risk is one is how important is it for the AI to produce an accurate response? And secondarily, if it produces a response or an outcome, how easy is it for you to validate if it's right or wrong? Right. And if it's very easy to do it, then go ahead and use it. If 90%, 85% accuracy is fine, then by all means, maybe you're just using it as directional insights, right? Maybe you're going to double check things anyway. So to me, I think hallucinations that hallucination, that ability to produce mistakes is probably the number one on people's mind. And oftentimes one of the biggest excuses for not using AI or for steering clear of AI. And that is addressed a lot in the model, and it's something that people need to get used to. It's a different way of thinking. You almost, I think, actually, this is what David described. I think I'm going to steal from you here for a second, but you need to treat the AI almost as if it is another human in your team. And how would you have applied controls to that human rather than necessarily just a piece of technology? With a human, if somebody else on your team did some work for you, you wouldn't just take it as accurate and use it. You would review it. You would double check it. Depending on the risk and the implications, you would perform. And you need to think about AI in many respects in a very similar light. So
Let me build off of that one too. That naturally comes next is where is the AI in your organization? And a lot of people are like, well, I banned ChatGPT or I banned Gemini. And it's like, well, but what we're starting to see more and more is the AI is being embedded inside of Word or even Google search results. It's getting into your ERP system. So there's modules being put all over the different landscapes for small and medium and large companies. And so you're aware of things like hallucination risks, but also are you aware where you are exposed to Gen AI and where you're not? So I think there's another very simple one to wrap your head around. Do you even have an idea of where this is influencing you? And if you're a practitioner, where is it influencing your clients? Do they know that they're using it or not using it and how they're using it? So even if you're not using it as an auditor or as a tax preparer or in advisory, you go to the client, do they know where they're using it and how they're using it?
yeah. Coming from the advisory space was a really interesting one because we had some discussions even with our legal folks around these. What's super interesting either as a provider or as the customer, both parties are coming to the table and potentially using AI. And you now need to understand not only how I use AI, but how is that counterparty using it? And then what happens with that? Even as a provider, are you okay with your customer using their AI to record a conversation that you had? Are you okay with that information being saved and stored? And where is it being saved and stored, right? So there's some interesting dynamics. It's a really good one. I mean, and it is sneaking up. It was funny to see these people banning AI. I mean, it's like, but there was some research. I think it was as much as even almost probably over a year ago that 70% of people were bringing AI to work. So banning AI was just, in all honesty, a bit of a waste of time.
I know it's funny. You think about history repeating itself. You would have thought after the internet and then social media
Yeah.
that everyone would have learned you just can't ban it. It's just not going to work. But apparently, we don't learn our lessons. I want to re-raise something you said, Jason, which is really the fact that it's actually written into our professional standards of conduct because I was actually involved in some of the IASBA's work on redefining the international standards on
Yeah.
ethics with AI coming into the fore. And the way that we kind of looked at it was this whole one, do you trust it? And often in audit we go trust but verify,
Mhm.
right? And so I see a lot of that starting to come out where they're like, yeah, make sure it can tell you where the sources are, go double check everything. The way I often tell people to think about it is it's a junior staff member or it's an
Mhm.
inexperienced staff member, and you're asking them to do something for you. So then you have to review and supervise as you would the staff, and it's built into our professional standards of conduct. In fact, that was part of the IASPA conduct. That was the other one, which I think you highlighted some too, was the threat of I think of it as technology intimidation. And we saw this with the advent of the ERPs and the audit and the data analytics in audit, where it was like, well, the system said it's okay, it must be okay, or it must be true. And you still have to have that, especially for, I'm going to say, more senior practitioners who may not want to or feel like they fully understand the technology. The kind of same thing there. You have to have that comfort level, or you have to treat it as a staff member and make sure at least somebody that is comfortable is reviewing a lot of what it does. Would you agree with kind of those interpretations?
What I would do is, that's what I say. I think we often try to put it into a kind of a binary box. It's a staff you have to review. I think you have to think about it more, it's a spectrum, right? What is it that they're using for? Hey, you know what? I'm asking my staff member to go and find me a restaurant where we're going to take the team out for dinner. Who cares? Go find a restaurant, go do it. I don't need to double check that. I'm coming up with an accounting conclusion on a complex revenue agreement. Better be reviewing that because it's super complex and who knows what may come out. So there is a spectrum, and I do think it's really important that people need to ask themselves, based on the use of the AI and the use of the output, what is the risk if it is wrong, right? What is the nature? And I think that's where you start recognizing there's a spectrum, then you can apply the right level of professional kind of skepticism or review or whatever it is that you need to do based on it. If the risk is very high, then absolutely you should. One, maybe you don't use AI yet. Maybe the answer is because of the risk being so high, let's just keep it contained. The flip side of it is, hey, let's use AI and let's autopilot it, because the reality is there are other ways that we will find mistakes, or if there is a mistake, it's a negligible impact. And I look at it that way. The other also reason is I do think that we talk a lot about AI being this junior member, and I think that is true today. I don't know if that will be true in a year or two's time. The methods by which AI is being used, and I don't mean to scare people on this, but it is becoming much smarter, and it will become an expert of a member of your team soon, and may even become the expert on your team, which is a really interesting thing to think about, where your expertise and the content and that subject matter expertise is actually coming from the AI. Then what is the methodology of validation? What is the responsibility there? How do you do that? So, but David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to put on that a little bit too. You have to remember you need to compare it against something, and the natural comparison is the human. So if it's doing a staff level task, how does the AI compare to the current staff? A manager task to a manager, a client to a client, and we have this tendency that we're very charitable to humans. So Donnie, I work with you. You make mistakes. It's okay. You have a little bit of spelling errors, but you're a great thinker. I'll keep working with you. Well, that's the same thing with the AI. We hold AI for some reason to this impossible standard of perfection, whereas humans are only held to, human level ability. And so it's important to keep in mind as you're comparing and benchmarking, deciding, do we use AI, do we not, is the client using, compare it against the relative benchmark of how good is the human. And if the human's performing at 85% and the AI is 87, wow, use the AI. Now, if it's below or build off of that, but I think that's really important that we get that through our mind and change our mindset and how we're thinking of, it's not perfection that the AI has to reach. It needs to reach better than humans and then continue to approach perfection. I say that as a teacher, having
I was
graded
going to say
lots of students,
perfection.
and students come in and they try their hardest, and sometimes they produce really well, and other students really struggle, and you need to keep that in mind when you do the comparison.
Yeah.
In today's world, cyber threats don't just target big businesses. They target you. Your small office or home office is at risk.
There are a lot of solutions out there. Not all of them have the same level of security. The Soho Protection Package is designed to provide proactive cybersecurity solutions.
If your firm is looking for assistance in developing your personalized IT policy, connect with an advisor today at link.improvetheworld.net/Soho Cyber. Gain peace of mind that you have the right technology in place to stay protected.
To me, one of the other things even we're using that is oftentimes, once again, it's a binary comparison as well. Is it better or not? What you have to remember with AI is your initial comparison is a starting point, and it will improve over time, and you improve the technology over time. I think that's where people say, oh, it's not as good as me, I'm not using it. It's not as good as you yet. But part of this exercise is for us to learn. And I really think we have to also change our mindset about when we approach the technology, it's not, especially where we are right now, it is not about achieving immediate parity. It's about learning the technology. And you might be a little bit below and may have to do a little bit more work. But then as you learn to use the technology more, as you train your technology more, it will improve and then exceed. And I think that's it. So you need to look at AI when you start using it and you validate its results, look at it as a journey. It's not where it is. It's not a set it and forget it technology like we used to. This is a technology that you set and then you reset and you reset and you reset and you reset on an ongoing basis because it will naturally get better. So
Interesting, interesting. Well, that was actually one of the things I like about your framework. One of the areas that you covered is the concept of continuous improvement.
mhm.
I think you've given us a little bit of a flavor there, but can you guys talk maybe a little bit more about this concept of continuous improvement within the governance framework, with the way that you guys have phrased it?
Yeah, so I think there's continuous improvement in two aspects. There's the human aspect, and then there's the technical model aspect. The models keep getting better. They release, Chat GPT, whatever, next number, Gemini, the next number. And so just the raw abilities of models improve and change over time. And so anytime a new model comes out, you need to go back and recheck, can it do these things now? And it's this, I love this term, jagged technological frontier. Just because it's a new model doesn't mean it gets better in everything. It might get better on dimensions A, B, and C, and worse on D and E. And so it is this living, breathing thing. The other part of change management or of improvement is to really think of the human side. I look at how I prompted 2 years ago versus now, and it's completely different. I now work when I'm writing and that I have 4 different AIs open at the same time, and I'm copying and pasting back and forth, and it's this living exercise of brainstorming and writing and collaborating and fact checking and all of this. And so there's the human evolution that's happening as you start to work with this tool and figure out how to use it. And both of those fit into this idea of governance of how mature are your people? How well trained are they? Are they evolving and getting better and improving? And then also, what are you doing with the model and what controls do you have around it? So when something new comes out, that you test it and you verify and you do typical change management controls to make sure it's working there. But both the human and the computer need to be considered when you're considering improvement and change.
Yeah, spot on. It's such a great point, but that the human component of this is so, so important. And I think maybe we do touch on the framework in some other areas about the training and the people development. But I feel like because we've had some discussions with people on governance, and I don't think it's an area that people are paying enough attention to. People keep asking me this question: how do I get trained on AI? And it's just the wrong question. The reality is, and there's another podcast out there I was listening to, and they said the same thing. There is no course. I mean, yes, I can teach you how to do prompt engineering, but I can't. But that is going to be a point in time, and I hate to say it, any course you take today will probably not be relevant or very applicable in 2 to 3 months' time. The real things is, hey, you need to use the AI, the typical chat bots on a daily basis, multiple times. Anything you do. Is it an accounting question or you're cooking dinner and you want a new recipe? Just keep using it. You need to try do the deep research capabilities and see how good they can actually research topics. We were chatting as we were starting the conversation, some of that vibe coding, right? Use it to actually build apps. It is super simple if you actually just do it. I mean, you just have to be experimenting with these tools. It's a very different way of learning. I think we wrote a quote at one point in time where we used to learn to get a job. Now learning is part of the job. You're just going to have to keep doing it. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, to be totally honest, because they want to just tell me what to do and then I'm going to do it. And it's like, sorry, I can't help you.
And Donnie, let me jump in right there. I think another big risk is people get scared. Oh, no, it's this fancy new AI technology. We just got off a vacation, and it was amazing how often in the cars we're driving around with my kids, they're like, well, what's the answer to this question? I'm like, I don't know. Boom, Chat GPT.
Yep.
And so we were in Iceland, and it was, what's the economy of Iceland? Where are all the male sheep? There's a whole bunch of females out here. What happened? And we could ask questions and immediately get answers. And it became this living, breathing part of our experience as a family that really led to better conversations, more human aspects, and all that. So it's not a scary technology. It really is easy once you get started and you get over that initial kind of fear factor and you try it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And the cool thing I think on that is no one sees you or no one hears you. So if you screw up and it gives you some weird answer, you're like, okay, I just asked the wrong thing or I didn't do it. It's not like you're in front like everybody here where you ask a question in the class and everyone looks at you like, whoa, you obviously wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. I think there is a bit of that stigma still. People sometimes will feel like that, hey, if I used AI to do something, people are going to look down on me. I'm an unapologetic AI user. I don't write complex emails without it. I don't write articles or posts on LinkedIn. Most of my research, I mean, I just use it for everything. And I think we need to get to that stage where this is not about whether you use AI, it's how you use AI, because every one of these questions we should be using it. I think I'm a relatively smart guy and I'll come up with some good idea, but why not get a second opinion in 15 seconds around something and I guarantee, as smart and as experienced you are, it'll probably find 2 to maybe 10 ideas that you haven't thought of. But we have to get past the stigma and we have to get past, but this is a big part of, to be honest, we think of governance as controls. A big part of governance is successful deployment, right? And many of these things about the successful outcome, and this component of training and people development I actually feel like most organizations are not doing it anywhere near close enough to what they need to be doing.
And if you're using this right, you take this framework, you drop it into an AI, and then you describe your organization. Hey, we're the Center for Accounting Transformation. We are worried about this, this, and this. You have these governance principles, which are applicable. How should I use them? What else should I be thinking about? And you have that conversation with it grounded in some governance principles that we've helped find, but then using the tool itself to improve your governance.
Yeah. I wonder, have you tried it with Notebook LM? It would be fun to take our governance and put it in Notebook LM and get a podcast out of it. Because that'd be a good way. Once again, if you don't feel like reading the whole thing and you want to just 10, 15, use products like Notebook LM and turn it into a beautiful podcast. Not this podcast is not going to be amazing.
You bring up, so we've gone through governance risk. We just talked a lot about controls, but and you point out, I should say, actually, you point out that the framework is not kind of, I'm going to call it this traditional control structure. One of the things that I think is not a part of the one of the things that I think is not part of that traditional control structure is the fact that you bring up these human, ethical, and social considerations, because we don't often see that on an internal framework. Can you tell us more about that part of the framework?
Yeah, so you think about human, ethical, and social considerations. I'll set the ethical ones aside. Those are obvious and get a lot of playtime in the news. You start thinking about what are the social implications of this, and you can think social in terms of the size of your organization. So what happens to people once we start saying we're going to use AI? And you've seen some companies come out and say we're AI first, we'll only hire people, or we're going to let a whole bunch of people go. That needs to be part of your governance of how you're communicating with your people around your intentions with AI and what it's going to mean for them. Good organizations are having those conversations, and some of them are difficult. Some of them will result in layoffs and hiring new things and retransitioning people to new roles. But if you open that up and have that open dialogue with people, that's going to help a lot more than fear and hiding. And so we wanted to embrace that piece, and we developed this framework, just so you know, it's not just two guys sitting in a room or our other two co-authors on it. We worked with over 1,000 professionals and went out and said, what are you worried about? What are you thinking about? What are the concerns your people have? And that was a big one. Human, ethical, and social considerations. People have a lot of questions, and you need to think about that as you're deploying and using AI.
Yeah, to me, I think I heard this recently, I think there's a real, when it comes onto the social and the people side, there's a real lack of clear leadership and vision in most organizations. Why are we doing this? Yeah, people use the productivity thing, but specifically, is the intent here to, hey, we're going to cut costs and really try to reduce our organization? And we will see some of those companies in more stable businesses where maybe growth projections or opportunities are lower, they will use it to, hey, how do we improve profitability? I think we will see a more, and I think the real upside of it is organizations say, listen, our goal here is not about reducing headcount. It's about how do we grow and how do we do things in ways that we've never been able to do, because this AI is going to either free up capacity and all accounting functions. And everyone, there are things that they can't do, and accounting teams and even internal, I guess, professional services firms, they want to do more things, but they don't have the time. So part of it is we will have more time. So let's do these things that we've always wanted to do that we don't have the time. But actually, in many ways, and the really exciting thing is this, how do we do things we never even thought that we could do, right? Is it getting into new service offerings? It's helping clients in new ways. Is it delivering services in new ways? When I've been starting to play around with Gemini 2.5, I actually started to imagine, I can't imagine a world where within 6 months, why would I ever do a PowerPoint presentation again? Because with the tools like Gemini, you effectively can create a website which will present things in so much more powerful ways, and it's quicker than probably creating a set of slides, and you can give it to your clients eventually. So to me, I think that's a big part of it. But we really need, when it comes down to people, we really need leaders to take a much clearer position of what is the ultimate goal and what are we trying to achieve, because that also guides. If the goal is, hey, we want to really maximize our org, training of your people becomes such a critical thing, because you cannot maximize your organization by leaving your people behind. The goal is we want all of them to be optimized, not because we're trying to usher them out the door. So to me, I think that's a major component. It sits partly in the kind of the strategy area, but it also sits in the people area, because one, based on that strategy, it should translate into people development. And frankly, I think we need to also just take responsibility for our people. All leaders and organizations have responsibility for their people. This is not these decisions that we make about technology adoption have real people impacts, and therefore we need to recognize that's the people impacts. It's not just about keeping them or letting people go. It's the discomfort that people are going to be, the change management component that people are going to experience, the change in job experience. So there's a lot there, which I think David touched on, and I think we really need to see more in organizations.
You're very much validated. So at the center here, one of the big things we looked at is we're shifting to look a lot more at business culture. And what does better business culture look like? That's the term we use, better business culture. And a lot of that is showing where it's really driven by that vision. And then it's how do you get people aligned into that vision? And this is not just strategic planning and aligning, which we've heard a lot about over the management side in a lot of years, but it's really about the culture that you're creating. I think you raised some very good points too, because that's one of the things for us with any automation project. When we go in, if a client comes in and like, we're trying to cut people, we're like, thanks, we're not going to do this project. If you want us to really look at what's happening, if you want us to help figure out how do you reskill or adapt positions so that you can accommodate some of these workers that might displace, those are the projects that we're usually trying to work on. I think you've emphasized as well this whole need for change management, with David also alluded towards several times, right? It's about bringing the people along with you, helping them adopt, giving them that, in effect, psychological safety. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm really going to be able to say like, hey, this is not going to work and why, and that will potentially get incorporated into the way that we're actually using a lot of these technologies. So I feel like a little different than what we've seen in historical technology adoption, but very much successful technology adoption incorporates a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Anything that I missed
A little,
here? Oh, go
a
ahead,
little
Dave.
caveat on that, Donny. I don't want to give the false impression, though, that people are going to be safe if they don't adopt AI. And I think that needs to be central, that if you're at an organization and they're talking AI, if you're not trying to learn it, you're gonna struggle and probably be let go. So AI is central. It's like when the computer came. You can't just be like, oh no, I'm gonna be on the typewriter forever. Email came. Oh good, I'm really good at snail mail. No, we are at a shifting point, and the sooner you adopt it, the better and easier it will be to continue on in the new roles that will be developed, because all the old roles are going to change.
Yep.
Some will disappear, few will disappear, but most will evolve into something new and different, and you need to be part of that evolutionary process.
Yeah, otherwise you'll become obsolete. 100%. I think it used to be the expression a year or so ago, hey, AI is not taking a job. A person that knows AI is going to take your job. No, AI will. If you're going to be doing the same thing and you only want to do the same thing you do today, AI will take your job. A lot of new jobs will emerge, a lot of new roles will emerge, or a lot of roles will evolve significantly. And I 100% want to echo David. You have to evolve with this technology. And in all honesty, people need to move relatively quickly, because this is technology technology has moved fast in the past, but man, oh man, the pace of evolution here is actually quite staggering. I think, sometimes we see, hey, well, only 15% of the organization is getting on board and 85% want to sit on the sideline. You have to remember that with this technology and its capabilities, you only need about 15 to 20% of the organization to be able to move it forward. But yeah, I think maybe one other thing I would put in there when it comes down to kind of the change management. I think this is where we need to change. We think of technology adoption as it either worked or it didn't. we're in a world where experimentation and innovation with technology is another big component. It is okay, and we need to teach. That's why when people are, it's like they put a system, did it work? No, it may not have worked perfectly, but you learned a lot. There's a lot of kind of an R&D mindset we need to be bringing in, or product development mindset within accounting. Try it. Try build a tool or an app or do research, and maybe it doesn't work. That's okay. Now you know it doesn't work. By the way, just because it didn't work today doesn't mean it won't work in about 3 weeks' time. But that experimentation, that permission to try things, to make mistakes, but the learning, right? It's what was the light bulb? Hey, you learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. We need to learn 20 different ways not to write an accounting memo or whatever it is. I do think that's something that we also need to introduce in the organization, which is a slightly different thing about adopting and change management. It is okay to experiment. It's okay to make mistakes, or not necessarily mistakes, to get things that when the AI doesn't work correctly. That's fine. It's because it's about the learning experience as much as about the getting the technology in place.
When you've mentioned learning, and then earlier, Jason, you were like, there's not like there's a course out there, but I got to call out that David actually has several courses online. David, you want to talk about that really quick, just because I thought that what you had out there was helpful.
Yeah, so I think, and Jason will correct me and give me his opinion after, there are basic things that you can learn to be better.
Yep.
So if you can learn few shot prompting and end shot prompting and those basic tools, then you can approach the AI in unique and different ways. And there's learnings, what's the basics of how it works, that it's probabilistic and not deterministic, and what that means. Those basic foundational pieces are going to be needed, and then you need to practice applying it in lots of different ways. So yeah, if you want to go out, I've got a book you can go buy. If you want to go to skillabyte.com, there's training out there. So there are different places you can learn and get upskilled. And then it is going to be this process that you don't do it once. It's not like, oh, I graduated college, I'm done. No, it's if not weekly, at least monthly. You're kind of saying, okay, what's new now? What's new now? What's new now? And just continue to develop.
Yeah, I think the point is that I think what people, when they ask me about training, is give me a course that I can get caught up to where you are. And that just, the reality is the way that, and David is probably the same, it's yes, I learn new things on an ongoing basis. And I'm experimenting with different forms of AI. I'm listening to various podcasts. They suggest tools. I go experiment with those tools. So yes, especially if you're starting off, there's lots of great courses which can get you to the starting line. But I think if you think that you're going to go to a course and then I'm done, that's the mistake. I think that's what worries me. It's you're not done. You're just beginning. And I would imagine that's probably going to be a lot of what David talks about, because get going. Now you need to use it and use it more and play with it. Right? I mean, it is funny, right? I don't prompt anymore. I really spend very little time prompting. If I need a complex prompt, then I'll let AI write my prompt for me. I'll tell it more what I want to do. I'll even just give it a whole bunch of documents, say, now you write the prompt for me, and we'll iterate on it. But yes, so there are things that you can learn and there's skills that you can improve. But I would say I'd look at those as getting you to the starting line or just out of the blocks. Now you have to keep exercising that muscle.
We've talked a lot about, right, especially right now, just kind of how do you get started with AI. I want to come back to the framework. So from a governance standpoint, what's the starting point for working with your, after I download it, what's the starting point for working with the framework you guys have published?
So step one, download it and review it. It's not a long document. Step two is then I think you go through the control considerations and just do an evaluation. Where are we weak? Where are we strong? And once you're done with that, and it's not a judgment, of good or bad. It's just this is where we are. Then you look at it and you step back and you get a team together and you say, okay, what should we do to move forward? We see that we're strong here, we're weak here. And that's where you make the strategy choice of here's how we're going to improve and get better for the next month, the next year, the next 2 years. So really, it's that simple. Read it, do a basic inventory, and then you can set your goals and design it into your strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing is as you go through this is what's applicable to you, right? I mean, it's fine. I mean, many companies, and we've done some of these assessments, they accept the risk. And they accept the risk because they don't think it's either meaningfully applicable to them at this stage, or they're just not actually planning to use AI in that capacity, which is also fine. Or you might just say, hey, you know what? I'm okay with us being exposed in this area. We're not too concerned about the reputational or whatever it might be. It really is it is a simple document. I mean, there's a lot of thought into it, but it's actually designed in a very simple way. I think what David described is spot on.
I agree, and I'll echo that again because I looked at it from that small and mid-sized entity lens, and I thought, well, this is very applicable. I can see that. I'm gonna reiterate something Jason said earlier because you kind of implied it here, but it comes back to that whole risk. So where am I seeing the most? I'm gonna call it residual risk and not tolerable risk to use our kind of audit side there, and where that's where I'm really gonna focus rather than just trying to hit everything
Yep.
out there.
Yeah.
Well, and Donnie, also, this is a great opportunity for small to medium-sized accounting firms. They can do it internally for themselves, and guess what? There's a lot of clients that need help on this. So once they prove it out with themselves, that's a service they can then go out and offer to others to say, hey, let me help you start getting an assessment. Let me help you start answering these questions and moving your organization forward. So I do think it's a great growth opportunity to help everybody else because, well, we all need help in this area.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Oh, that's making me think too. Like there's a lot of the firms that are creating the cyber side, tack this on to that team to do the cyber advisory and really look at the broader scope of risk rather than just this narrow cyber privacy kind of piece. Well, not that side narrow cyber and privacy is that narrow, but this is probably a little more relevant right now for a lot of the business owners out there. All right. Well, we've hopefully demystified what an AI governance framework looks like for everyone out there. If they wanted to get in touch with either of you, what's the best ways to contact you?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get hold of me. As I said, I'm starting a new position in a few weeks, so probably LinkedIn. So you can just find me my first name, last name. I think I'm the only Jason Pikoos on LinkedIn, so it should be relatively easy to find. So it's probably easy, and feel free to send me a message directly.
And just for those of you that are only listening, his last name is spelled Pikoos.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not that easy. There's 2 David Woods that work at BYU. So to find me,
Oh my gosh.
to find me, LinkedIn would be great. David Wood at BYU in accounting, or you can just email me at davidwood@byu.edu.
Well, thank you both again. I appreciate you taking the time. And thanks for all of you out there listening. We hope to see you on another episode of Innovation Insights. Take care.
Thank you.